This entire year has been packed with good games. Just so many massive experiences that are so much better than anybody could have predicted. And one of those has been the Resident Evil 4 remake. The game was so much better than the original version, with deeper combat, darker stories, cooler locations, and bigger boss fights. But a lot of people have been curious about the Resident Evil 4 remake DLC. In the original version of Resident Evil 4, we had this extra chapter called Separate Ways, where we played as super spy Ada Wong and took a very different path through the main quest of Resident Evil 4. Well, it has finally arrived. It's been released, and I must say, this new version of Separate Ways is completely different and, in my opinion, 20 times better. Except for one small thing, but let's discuss. Hi, what's up gamers, DreamcastGuy here. If you could do me a favor, like this video and subscribe if you haven't already. So we're going to try and break this down in a completely spoiler-free fashion. The entirety of this DLC is about 4 to 5 hours. It's definitely one of those things where you can sit down and crank it out. But as soon as you boot it up, the biggest difference between Ada versus Leon is that Leon is trying to save the president's daughter, and a lot of times he will kill anybody in his path. Chainsaw dudes, big freaks, no matter what, Leon considers them a target. Whereas when it comes to Ada Wong, she doesn't really care about the greater good or trying to make sure that people get out of this unscathed. She has a pure single focus: to get the Amber. Now, I'm not going to go too deep into what that means, but she's essentially a super spy trying to track down a bioweapon. That means that in a lot of her fights, you can just run. You can completely skip huge chunks of this DLC, but to me, that's actually kind of awesome. You see, Ada has a grapple hook. She's got these weird laser eye things called iris that lets her instantly see anything that's grappleable. It's basically like an excuse to have grapple points labeled on your eyeballs, but it lets you actually just skip around, flip outside the typical boundaries of where Leon explored, and most importantly, you can even use the grapple hook in combat to instantly zip to targets and do a melee takedown. I think I love this because there are multiple times where there is an unwinnable fight, where you get trapped on a bridge with 5,000 axe swinging ganados, or you're in a room that's just about to be completely crushed by a drill guy and you have to grapple hook through a slot to escape. I think it's super cool that this entire adventure feels like a different vibe. Ada does not care about these people. She doesn't really even care about Leon that much, at least it seems like. She is completely set on the idea of get in and get out. Now, the reason she's doing this is for a paycheck, but also because of Albert Wesker. Classic Resident Evil fans will obviously recognize this guy because he's somebody that's been in multiple of the games, but he is now a super bad dude. He's kind of the big bad of the entire Resident Evil franchise. Well, in the original version of this, he was just a voice on a phone. He didn't actually physically show up, whereas in this version, he does, and we get a chance to talk to him a lot. Let's talk about it. I think the voice acting of a lot of these characters is better. There was a lot of people that just weren't super impressed by the voice of Ada Wong in the original plotline we had for Resident Evil 4 Remake, but now that she has some standalone DLC, I think we're getting a chance to see her really kind of express herself. Getting to see not just her interactions with Leon, but seeing how she talks to Louise, or seeing how she talks to Wesker. And I think her voice is fantastic, but I kind of don't like the new voice for Wesker. This guy is probably somebody we're going to be seeing in a lot of future games. He's probably going to be an RE5 remake, or if that's what comes next, or if we get a Code Veronica remake, which personally is what I want most. But his voice sounds too masculine. The original voice for Albert Wesker was kind of whiny, and I think that worked. The idea of this like super weapon puppet master guy. I kind of like the fact that he was like, Chris, oh, Chris, you're going to defeat me. Ah. And now he's like, hello, it is I, Alpha Chad Wesker. It's just a different choice. I'm not even going to say that it's bad, but it's just so different that it's a little bit jarring. But speaking of different, let's talk about some of the major changes that have taken place in Separate Ways Remake. I must say, there was some concern about cut locations from the original version of RE4 Remake. While beating the game as Leon Kennedy, there was a lot of cool moments that looked great, but there were certain spots and a particular boss that people were sad to see was gone. Basically, if you know what I'm talking about, there is a very big, very spooky, very messed up mega enemy that appeared in the original game. It is back in the Separate Ways DLC, and it is somehow even creepier. I like the fact that there are certain sections of this that are repeated. You go through locations and stuff that existed in the main campaign, but now they feel different. You get to grapple hook past puzzles or certain big encounters, like if you're trying to fight the El Gigante. He's like a huge actual giant, but now you can jump from house to house and actually hit him while he's destroying the buildings you're standing on. I like the fact that Separate Ways feels like a totally extra part of the campaign that's not necessary, but as a person that's now beaten it, it feels so good. It feels so justified. This is a $10 piece of DLC, and in my opinion, that is the perfect price. I'm going to go through this at least 2 more times, so I imagine I'm going to be probably getting, 15 hours of fun out of this. So for $10, to me, that's completely worth it. I honestly wish that more studios would do DLC like this, which is that instead of trying to make a super big expansion and charging $20 or $30 or $40 for a big expansion pack, I kind of like the fact that this is a tiny piece of DLC for $10. The RE4 remake was a huge financial success. It sold tens of millions of copies already, so I think it's smart that instead of trying to charge $20 or $15, they're going, okay, if we can charge $10, maybe a bunch of people will give it a shot. I ended up buying this game on the PlayStation 5 and also on the Xbox Series X. I've loved it and beaten it multiple times on both, and I think genuinely I like this DLC so much, I'm going to probably buy it on both systems. This game plays from the Xbox Series X, but I want to platinum it on both. I want to get every single achievement and trophy in both versions of the game. This is great, but I guess now we have to wonder what comes next. I suppose we'll find out very soon. Thank you so much for watching, gamers. If you enjoyed this video, give it a big old thumbs up, share it with your friends, and subscribe if you haven't already, and please keep dreaming. Thanks so much for watching that video. If you want to see something else, you can always click this link to see what I put up last, or, subscribe and see what's coming up next. Also, I promise that whatever I do, it'll try not to suck.